now I also care about the future generations. But if you are to be consistent, what Darwinism teaches is this all against all, this personal survival, altruism, morality, civilization, and all the things that we're talking about here are actually illusions.
Okay, I see where you're coming from.
And this isn't according to me.
Okay.
This is according to Richard Dawkins. This is according to all the neo-Darwinists. That empathy, sympathy, civilization, morals, the care for the environment are pure illusions in a real sense. The only thing that actually matters is your own survival and reproductivity.
Okay, can I say something? Sure. I think your very framework for your worldview is a religious framework. So you always see that, you know, you have to relate your framing of understanding according to some kind of set belief. Richard Dawkins had one view about the world, Sam Harris had another view, Christopher Hitchens had another view. Not all atheists think the same thing. I personally, you know, I believe in the facts of evolution, what Richard Dawkins obviously talks about himself, and etc. But I don't believe in his life purpose. He has a different life purpose to I have. The reason why I see myself as sort of, I'm trying to think. The reason why I have concern for future generations is because it is a selfish reason. I couldn't live with myself thinking that I'm not doing my part in playing value, in providing some sort of future for civilization, right? Do you get what I mean? Do you actually understand what I'm saying? Because I know I wasn't very articulate there. This is a very tricky subject.
The only thing which concerns me is that I agree with you totally. Everyone can have a different perspective on purpose. Sam Harris has a different perspective to Richard Dawkins, to Christopher Hitchens, to yourself, to the Dalai Lama, whoever. But what I was pointing at is a logical deduction of holding a Darwinian worldview that we're here to survive and reproduce. And what you're actually doing is, you're actually saying two different things. You're saying on the one end, you have values which are very good values. They're not bad values, and I'm not challenging them. I actually commend you for them. And the values are, you're caring about future generation, which is going to come after you, which may come 1,000 years after you. But that is not consistent with believing that we evolved from a Darwinian mechanism, because every single aspect of the human nature, from our morals, from our language, from our art, everything should be deducible at the most fundamental level to survival and reproduction. And this is why what Richard Dawkins does in The God Delusion is he explains altruism, empathy, sympathy, which is what you're talking about. This is not true in an absolute sense, in a value sense. It's only true in terms of reciprocation. The only reason, according to him, and this is not his view, it's a Darwinian worldview, the only reason why I want to help you is because eventually one day you're going to help me. But that's fine under that worldview. But what you're speaking about is something in 100 or 200 or 500 years' time. But according to a Darwinian worldview, wait, one second.
Climate change is happening now, and there's a lot of evidence that we could see massive repercussions within the next few decades.
That's absolutely fine.
So it is actually a personal thing.
Okay. But now what you're doing is this. The thing that we started on was your concern for future generations.
No, but I want my children and my grandchildren and their children to have this beautiful experience of life.
I don't disagree with you. I totally agree with you. My question is, holding values which don't protect your own survival and reproduction, that don't amplify it, doesn't make sense under a Darwinian worldview. So what I'm trying to say is this. What your values are perfect. I don't have a problem with that. You should care for the future generations. My issue is that worldview, that you care about people to come after you who are not related to you, right?
Everyone's related though.
That doesn't make sense under a Darwinian worldview because it doesn't aid your survival or reproductivity. That's what I'm saying. That's what Darwinism is. No, but hang on a second. What you're doing again is, you're changing it from a question about values, which is metaphysical, and you're reducing it to a genetic problem.
Can I interrupt? I think you've misunderstood Darwin's work. Right. So basically, the concern is more about the survival of the species. And I'll give you an example. You know the black widow spider? You know how it famously kills the mate? the mate actually knows that it's going to be killed. But why does it do that? Because it needs to produce. And by producing, it ensures the survival of the species. Do you see what I mean there? So it's not always just about a selfish, reason for that thing to actually survive in this here present moment of time. It's ensuring that the species survives.
Okay, what you've actually done there is you've actually convoluted two different types of natural selection working at different levels, and these are actually rival theories. One is natural selection working at a genetic level, and one is at the group level. And these two are views where people actually disagree. So for example, Richard Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene, he says it works at a genetic level. E.O. Wilson, who's another evolutionary biologist, he believes in group selection. And these two are big rivals. It's like, Manchester and Chelsea, right? But what you're doing is this. You're putting them together. Remember, in the Black Widow, the hypothesis is that the mate knows it's going to die, but the reason why it mates is because the Black Widow is going to carry on its genes. So that's the selfish gene-centered view. But what you're doing is, you're saying it wants to ensure the survival of its species, which is a rival view of group selection. You can't hold two different views here. You either have to say gene-centered view or group selection. You can't put them together.
I have never claimed to be a scientist. I was giving you my philosophy on why I care about climate change. And this conversation has gotten way too scientific for me to even be involved in.
Okay, but wouldn't you agree that...
Before this started filming, we were talking about morality. So I think we've got into a realm where I'm not actually qualified to talk about this.
Okay, that's fine. But can I ask you, since you made a statement, that's where we got off on a tangent about evolution. You said that you believe that you are a product of evolution from bacteria, going through the primates to us human beings, right? Why do you believe this? What's your reasons for believing? What's your reasons for believing in the Darwinian history of life that you're linked to bacteria?
Because there's evidence for it.
Okay.
I mean, I can't go through and explain all the evidence there is, but I know. I discovered, I really took on board the theory of evolution, when I was 17, 18.
But what led you to making that decision is all I'm asking. Just your own personal thoughts.
I saw the evidence.
So what was the evidence that you're linked to bacteria? Or the great
Like
apes?
I said, I'm not a scientist.
You share genes with bacteria.
Yeah, but then again, logically, what was in the beginning?
All life shares.
No, that's fine. But
What made that Big Bang or whatever you...
look,
I mean, no one knows why the Big Bang happened, and scientists don't claim to know.
If you don't
That's
know
the thing
why-
with science. We admit when we say we don't know.
No, that's
We don't
fine.
have
Just
to fill
to
in
make
the
that
blanks.
statement if you don't know.
Say that again?
You said to him that you have evidence for evolution. What evidence do you have?
Like I said, I'm not a scientist, but from the things I've read,
no, sorry, let him continue.
like, I'm not a scientist. I can't go into this. There are people who are better qualified to talk about this.
Okay,
than I
but
am.
what if I was to say to you, there's a biologist, his name is Hardy, I forgot his first name, and what he basically says is that we're linked to aquatic apes, and he's got this aquatic ape theory, right? And there's another, Eugene McCarthy, who's got a hypothesis that human beings are the product of pig and chimp hybrid, right? And we evolved through that. So if I was to give you the pig-chimp hypothesis, the aquatic ape hypothesis, or the standard Darwinian history in which we're linked to bipedal apes, you obviously follow this one. How do you decide between these three? Or have you just said to yourself, because people who are more intelligent than me say this is the truth, I follow them?
Let me clear up my standing on this. So look, like I said, I don't claim to be an expert on this, but I reject religion's claims for creation. But even though I'm not an expert on evolution, I know that from what I've seen throughout the years, which I can't claim right now, I know I've seen enough evidence to put my understanding on this. Okay?
Okay, so that's absolutely fine. Look, my question, I'm just going to narrow it down a bit. When it comes to evolution in terms of natural selection, we observe that, and that's not really a problem. The issue really is Darwinism, which makes a claim that from bacteria, from the simplest, most, form of life, over billions of years, all of life evolved through a process of natural selection working on variations. Now that's a very big claim. That's very different to just believing in natural selection. What reason do you have to hold on to this worldview? Because that's actually a very big
But
statement.
the thing is, I don't hold on to it in the sense that it defines, my everyday life and, the actions.
Well,
that
it
I
makes
take.
you reject religion, for one.
Yeah, because I would reject religion even without evolution.
Okay.
Because there is just no evidence for it. And that is a whole different topic which you can talk about for hours.
Okay, so let's start on this, right? Before we move on to the topic of religion, the topic of God. If I was to say to you right now, I've only got 10 minutes left of my life. Either I can believe in God or I can believe in the Darwinian history of life.
But that's two different things. You're believing in an end goal, whereas I'm talking about a process that got us here.
Sure. Now, say with me, I want to believe in the Darwinian worldview. And I want to die in peace that there is no God, Darwinism's true, what Richard Dawkins says is true, and all of life evolved gradually, naturalistically. Now, I've got, say, 2 hours, right? What evidence would you give me that that worldview is true?
That Darwin's theories are right. I mean, I can go on Google right now and pull up a load of things.
Sure.
This is what I'm saying. I'm not a scientist. I can't sit here and give you the technical details.
Wait, one second. Before you go on Google, you already have a belief. You have that belief.
Just a logical question.
Sure.
Let's say some theory came along tomorrow that disproved evolution, and there was solid evidence for it.
By the way, I don't
I
disagree
would
with.
flip like a pancake,
Look.
and I would adopt it if the evidence was
Okay,
sufficient.
I don't disagree with evolution. I disagree with Darwinism. They're two different things,
Yeah.
right?
Also, Darwin's theories were just the starting of this theory. So there's some things that Darwin said which have actually been proven wrong. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go too much into it, but things surrounding genes.
Darwin
DNA.
didn't know about genes.
Yeah, exactly. So calling a Darwinian worldview is not fair to.
Okay, so what if I call it a neo-Darwinian worldview, the modern synthesis? Richard Dawkins, Fisher, Simpson, right, Mayer. The worldview that all of life evolved via natural selection working on variations is something which leads people to say there is no God, I believe in the Darwinian worldview. All I'm asking you is, can you give me evidence? Forget Google. What evidence do you have right now to hold on to that belief? That that's true.
Well, to be honest, with Darwin's views, I can say again, I'm not an expert, but I know a little bit about the Big Bang. I mean, that's enough for me to warrant not believing in religion. The issue isn't me believing in evolution. The issue is me not believing in religion.
Right.
They're two different things.
Okay, so let's park the issue of Darwinism. Let's park that.
Okay.
What about genetics?
Like we share genes with
If I-
all of life.
Right.
Bacteria, monkeys,
Also-
trees,
Sure.
humans.
If I put you on the spot as well to defend your religion, you would have the same kind of,
Well, I'd be happy to, but there's an interesting question about genes, okay?
We share genes with all of life, right?
Okay, so there's shared genes.
About DNA. What about DNA?
One second.
It was discovered in 92 DNA.
One second.
Only 92. What's this
carry on.
One second.
DNA.
To look at two different things, and because there is homology, because there's similarity, to say that there is correlation, therefore it's causation, therefore the two are linked. This is a logical fallacy. Because two
It's
things.
not, because in genetics, if two different organisms share genes, even if it's 1%, it doesn't have to be 99% or 97% for like a chimpanzee. If two different organisms share even 1% of gene, that means they're connected biologically. That means they have a common ancestor. I'll give you an example. Okay, me and my brother, I have one brother. We share a lot of genes together because there's a reason why we share genes. Me and my brother, because we have loads of common ancestors. But the most recent common ancestor is my mother and father.
Sure.
Right, and that principle applies to all of life.
Okay, so why would you take this, the fact that you share genes with your brother, and then say because of this all of life has a common ancestor?
Because it applies, because they also share genes with me all of life.
Okay, so tell me this. When you have two different things and they have some similarity in structure or location, does that necessarily mean that they have a common ancestor?
If they have the similar, if they have any amount of set identical DNA sequences.
Okay.
They mean that they share one
Okay,
common ancestor.
so before we move on to the human chimp DNA, if we have a Mercedes, right?
Well, that's not biology.
No, but that's fine. We're talking about similarity here. Okay,
It's very different. Genetics and
okay,
cars
but,
are very
but
different.
let me just complete the example.
Cars can't reproduce.
Okay. Let me just give you an example. So you have a Mercedes and you have a Ford car.
Yeah.
They have similarity. They have homology. But that homology is not due to common descent, it's due to common design. Meaning the design is the same, right? So I don't disagree with you about the data. Where we disagree is the inference on the data. So for example, what have you been taught about the similarity between humans and chimps? What have you learned in school about it?
Just that we share a lot of DNA with each
A lot. How much percent?
98.
98%, right? Now, the reason why I wanted to cover this is because there's lots of things we're taught at school which we don't really challenge, we just accept. And one of the things that I was taught is that we share almost all of our genes with the chimp. Now, when I researched this, I discovered that in 1975, King and Wilson, they did an experiment. And what they did in an experiment was they tried to compare the human genome with the chimp genome. And they discovered 1.3 billion letters. I want you to remember that. 1.3 billion letters were different in the human and the chimp genome. So what they did is they took the human genome, they took the chimp genome. Then they deleted 1.3 billion letters of the human and the chimp genome which were discrepancies, which didn't fit. And then they matched the rest and they said it's almost 100%. The reason they did that is because they assumed common ancestry and they deleted the differences. So if you have an experiment which assumes common ancestry and then says the human and the chimp genome is 98% similar, you can't use that experiment to prove common ancestry because it's circular reasoning, because the conclusion is within the assumptions. So it's not 98%.
What is it?
We don't know.
What do you mean we don't know?
Okay, there's 5 lines of reasoning that some biologists have published recently to say that because of indels, because of missing parts of the DNA, because of a few other things which I don't remember at the moment, we can't even compare the chimp genome to the human genome. We just can't. So the experiment which was done in 1975 was an experiment which was oversimplified, and right now neo-Darwinists, people who don't even believe in God, they've disregarded the experiment. But the popular public, you find people wearing the 98% chimp shirt or 98%, and they're trying to show, oh, we're related to the chimps. But there's two distinct problems here. Number one, correlation doesn't mean causality, even if the human genome was 100% same. Two, 1.3 billion letters were ignored.
Why?
So look, because they assumed common ancestry.
How many letters are there in the whole genome?
I'll get it out for you. But what I'm trying
But did they have the full genome though at that time?
If you just look at a chip,
Did they actually have the full genome for both of them?
No, but so,
it looks really
Good. Question. Did they have full genome at that time to compare?
No, they didn't have
So they didn't have full genome. How much percentage did they have at that time?
a lot less.
A lot less than 98%, right?
Yep.
Can I ask you, do you actually believe that we just appeared on the earth like this? Promoting the t-shirt.
Yes, I was created. That's what I believe. I was created by
Can I give you a sign of evolution? Just a sign?
Yeah, I'll give you a sign.
There's records and a certain amount of evidence that shows that Jesus was about that short. And everyone around that time, but even if it's like you go to like old similarities,
means that they have a common ancestor.
No, but like I said to you, the example with the cars, you can use the same evidence and say common descent rather, common design rather than common ancestor.
Genes are linked throughout generations. So all your ancestors share your genes. And all your descendants will share your genes.
Okay, so you asked the question. Okay. I want to answer your question next because that's an interesting point.
Did you hear what I just said?
Yeah, I did.
What did I say? What did I say?
Question and I'll go.
What did did I say? You didn't hear what I said.
3.7 billion letters, right, are in the human and the chimp DNA, approximately.
Where does it say?
When you add these two figures together, you get 3.7 billion. And what they did is they ignored 1.3 billion letters.
I don't know. I'm not a
And
scientist.
they ignored it
Why?
because what they did is they assumed common ancestry, so they ignored the differences.
How can you call that science?
Well, look, the fact of the matter is, as long as they were honest, it's fine. But it's dishonesty. I'm not saying you are. Other people, when they say this is proof of common ancestry,
I can't describe this.
when it comes,
I understand.
You understand? Look,
I have another question. My understanding was that the full human genome was discovered in 2001.
yeah, it was sequenced out. Yeah.
Yes, sequenced out. So that means in 1975 they didn't even have
No, they didn't. They had a part of it.
part of it. So they just compared a part of it. They didn't even have the full
And in that part, they deleted 1.3 billion.
even in that part they took, they deleted studies.
New studies. It's like it's done that study again, like
Yeah.
5 years ago.
So
right?
new
It's
study,
like some old study that was wrong or something.
Look, new studies have actually shown the human chimp DNA is actually much more different. Right?